Mom, I've already talked to my lawyer. We've moved everything into my name. The house, your savings, all of it. So honestly, I don't need to keep pretending anymore. I don't need you, old woman. I sat there at my kitchen table staring at my daughter Simone's face. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was smiling. Actually smiling as she slid legal documents across the table toward me, like she was serving me divorce papers from my own life. My hands were shaking, but I kept them folded in my lap. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. "What inheritance, Simone?" I asked. My voice came out calmer than I expected. She blinked. Once, twice. "What do you mean, what inheritance?" "The house on Parkside, your retirement account, the life insurance policy, everything Dad left, everything you've been sitting on for years." I took a sip of my coffee. It had gone cold, but I swallowed it anyway. "I sold the house 2 years ago, sweetheart." Her smile faltered. "What?" "I donated most of the retirement money to Catholic charities last spring. The rest went to a scholarship fund at Canisius College. The life insurance policy lapsed 3 years ago, when I couldn't afford the premiums anymore." I watched the color drain from her face like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her perfectly manicured hands clenched into fists on top of the papers she'd brought. "You're lying," she whispered. I stood up, walked to the kitchen drawer, and pulled out a folder. I'd kept everything organized, the way I always did. Bank statements showing account balances of $47.63. Donation receipts with official stamps. A thank you letter from the College Scholarship Committee. I set it all in front of her. "There's nothing in my name, Simone. Nothing for you to take. I gave it away to people who actually needed it." She stared at the papers like I'd just shown her a death certificate. Her death certificate. "How could you? That was my money. I earned it by putting up with you all these years. You earned nothing. I gave you everything because I was your mother. But you don't get to claim a debt I never charged." She shot up so fast her chair fell backward and crashed against the floor. "You vindictive old bitch. You did this just to punish me." "No," I said quietly. "I did this to save myself." She grabbed her purse, crumpled the useless papers in her fist, and stormed toward the door. But she turned back, and her eyes were different now. Not hurt, not sad, cold, calculating. "Don't call me when you're dying," she said. "Don't expect me to come to your funeral. You're dead to me." "I won't," I said. "I promise." The door slammed hard enough to rattle the crucifix on my wall. I stood there in the silence of my small Buffalo apartment, listening to the sound of her heels clicking down the hallway, getting fainter and fainter until they disappeared completely. And I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Free. But freedom came with a price I didn't see coming. 2 weeks later, I found a letter in my mailbox. No stamp, no return address, just my name written in blocky handwriting that made my stomach turn. "You think you did the right thing, but you have no idea what you've set in motion. She won't stop, and neither will I." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking worse than they had when Simone told me she'd stolen everything I owned. Except she hadn't stolen anything, because there was nothing to steal. But someone was watching me. Someone knew what had happened. And someone was planning something. The letters kept coming. Every few days, another one. Same handwriting. Same vague threats that made my skin crawl every time I opened my mailbox. "You made a mistake. She deserves what's hers. This isn't over." Then I saw Simone's Mercedes parked across the street from my building. Just sitting there. Watching. Waiting. I walked past it with my grocery bags, trying not to look, trying to pretend my heart wasn't hammering in my chest. Her window rolled down. "Mom, we need to talk." I wanted to keep walking. I wanted to lock my door and never open it again. But she was still my daughter. Somewhere under all that poison, there had to be something left of the little girl I'd raised alone after her father died. 5 minutes, I said. She followed me upstairs, and when we got to my apartment, she didn't waste time on small talk. She pulled out more papers, legal papers, official papers with stamps and signatures. "Brett and I are filing a petition with the court," she said. Her voice was cold, mechanical. "We're having you declared mentally incompetent. You gave away a fortune without telling anyone. You're clearly not capable of making your own decisions anymore. So we're taking control of everything. Your finances, your medical care, your life." I felt the floor tilt under my feet. "Your what?" "You heard me. We have a lawyer. We have evidence. And we're going to win. So you might as well just cooperate and make this easier on everyone." "Evidence of what?" "That I chose to give my money to charity instead of leaving it to you. That's not incompetence, Simone. That's a choice. It's a choice that proves you're not thinking clearly. No rational person would do what you did." I looked at this woman sitting in my kitchen, threatening to take away the one thing I had left. My autonomy, my dignity, my right to live my own life. And I realized she wasn't just greedy. She was dangerous. "Get out," I said. "This isn't over, Mom. You're going to regret this." But here's what Simone didn't know. Here's what no one knew. I'd been preparing for this my whole life. I'd spent 43 years as a nurse at Sisters of Charity Hospital, dealing with families who fought over dying patients like vultures over a carcass. I'd watched husbands try to declare their wives incompetent so they could drain their accounts. I'd seen children forge signatures on DNR orders. I'd learned every trick, every loophole, every way people tried to steal someone's life right out from under them. And I'd sworn I'd never let it happen to me. So when I walked into that courtroom 3 weeks later, representing myself because I couldn't afford a lawyer, I had documentation. Medical records proving I was sound. Bank statements proving my donations were deliberate and well-planned. Witness testimony from my doctor, from Catholic charities, from people who actually knew me. Simone sat in the front row with Brett and their expensive lawyer, looking confident, looking like she'd already won. The judge was a black woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and zero patience for nonsense. She listened to their lawyer paint me as a confused old woman who'd been manipulated by charities. She listened to Simone testify about how worried she was about me. Then she looked at me. "Mrs. Callahan, do you have anything to say?" I stood up. My knees ached. My hands were shaking. But my voice was steady. "Your Honor, I'm 70 years old. I've worked my whole life. I've raised a daughter alone. I've made thousands of decisions, and giving away my money wasn't a mistake. It was the best decision I ever made, because I learned something important. What you leave behind isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, and I'd rather touch a stranger's life than reward my daughter for treating me like an ATM." I saw Simone's face crumble. Just for a second. Then it hardened again. The judge looked at my documentation. She looked at Simone. She looked back at me. "The petition is denied. Mrs. Callahan is fully competent to manage her own affairs. This case is dismissed." I won. But winning didn't feel like I thought it would. Because when I walked out of that courtroom, I realized I'd lost my daughter. Maybe forever. The question wasn't whether I'd made the right choice. The question was whether I could live with the consequences, and whether Simone would ever forgive me, or if I'd ever forgive her. I woke up that Tuesday morning the same way I'd woken up every morning for the past 2 years. Alone, but not lonely. There's a difference, I've learned. Loneliness is a hollow ache, a void that pulls at you. Being alone is just quiet. And after 70 years of noise, beeping monitors, crying patients, Simone's teenage tantrums, Daniel's laughter before it was taken from me, quiet felt like mercy. My apartment sits on the 3rd floor of a pre-war building on Richmond Avenue, just a 10-minute walk from Delaware Park. It's small, 1 bedroom, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people, A living room with a window that faces east so I can watch the sunrise. The rent is manageable on my Social Security and the small pension from the hospital. I don't need much. A coffee maker, a good chair, a radio that still picks up the classical station. That morning I made my coffee the way I always do. 2 scoops of Folgers, no sugar, a splash of milk. I stood at the window and watched the October light spill across the park, turning the leaves into fragments of stained glass. The trees were at their peak, those deep reds and burnt oranges that only happen in western New York, when autumn comes hard and fast, and the first frost isn't far behind. I was thinking about Daniel. I do that sometimes, let myself slip back into the past like it's a warm bath. I was thinking about the day we drove out to Letchworth State Park, just the 2 of us before Simone was born. We hiked down to the lower falls, and Daniel stood at the edge of the gorge with his arms spread wide, shouting something stupid like, "I'm the king of the world." I told him he was an idiot. He kissed me anyway, tasting like the peanut butter sandwiches we'd packed for lunch. That was 49 years ago. He's been gone for 43. The knock on my door pulled me out of the memory. I wasn't expecting anyone. Mrs. Kowalski from 2B sometimes stopped by with pierogi, but she always called first. I set my coffee down and checked the peephole. Simone. My stomach tightened. She was standing in the hallway, wearing a camel-colored coat I knew cost more than my monthly rent, holding a leather portfolios under one arm. Her blonde hair, dyed though she'd never admit it, was pulled back in a sleek ponytail. She looked impatient, like she had somewhere better to be. I opened the door. "Simone, this is a surprise. Can I come in?" She didn't wait for an answer, just brushed past me into the apartment. She glanced around like she was cataloging everything. The faded floral couch I'd bought at a yard sale, the crucifix on the wall that had belonged to my mother, the stack of library books on the coffee table. "I wasn't expecting you," I said, closing the door. "Is everything okay?" She set the portfolio on the kitchen table and turned to face me. Her smile was thin, the kind of smile you give a stranger. "I'm fine, Mom. I just needed to take care of some things." Things. She opened the portfolio and pulled out a stack of papers. "I've been talking to my lawyer. Brett knows a guy who specializes in estate planning. We figured it was time to get your affairs in order." I felt a prickle of unease. "My affairs are in order." "Are they?" She slid the papers toward me. "Because from what I can see, you're sitting on a decent amount of equity. The house on Parkside. I sold that house 2 years ago." She blinked. "What?" "I sold it. I told you at the time. You were at that conference in Miami. You didn't tell me." "I did. You said, 'That's great, Mom.' And then you hung up because you had a meeting." Her jaw tightened. "Fine, whatever. But there's still your retirement account, your savings, the life insurance policy Dad left." I sat down at the table, suddenly tired. "Simone, why are you here?" "I'm trying to help you." "By doing what?" "Taking inventory." Her face flushed. "Don't be dramatic. I'm your daughter. I have a right to know what you have so I can make sure it's protected." "Protected from what?" "From you making bad decisions." "You're 70, Mom. You're not thinking clearly." I looked at her, really looked at her, and tried to find the little girl who used to curl up in my lap and ask me to read "Good Night Moon" one more time. The girl who cried when she scraped her knee and believed me when I told her a Band-Aid and a kiss could fix anything. She wasn't there. Maybe she never had been. "I'm thinking perfectly clearly," I said. "Clearer than I have in years, actually." She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "So where's the money then? If you sold the house, where did it go?" "I used some of it to pay off the mortgage. The rest, I gave it away." Her eyes narrowed. "You gave it away?" "Yes." "To who?" "Catholic Charities, a scholarship fund at Canisius, a women's shelter on the east side. Places that needed it." For a moment, she just stared at me. Then she laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. You're joking. I'm not. You gave away my inheritance? It wasn't your inheritance, Simone. It was my money. She pushed off the counter, her hands clenched into fists. Do you have any idea how selfish that is? I'm your daughter. I'm your only child. That money was supposed to go to me. Why? I asked. What have you done to earn it? Her mouth opened, then closed. I shouldn't have to earn it. I'm your daughter. And I'm your mother. But that doesn't mean I owe you everything I have. She grabbed the papers off the table, crumpling them in her hands. You know what? I don't need your permission. Brett's lawyer already filed the paperwork. Everything you have, whatever's left, it's already in my name. I stood up slowly, my knees aching. There's nothing left, Simone. Bullshit. I'm telling you the truth. I have this apartment which I rent. I have my Social Security. I have a small pension. That's it. There's no house, no savings, no life insurance. I let the policy lapse 3 years ago because I couldn't afford the premiums, and I realized I didn't need it. I don't need to leave you anything, because you've already made it clear you don't need me. Her face went white. You did this on purpose. You did this to punish me. No, I said quietly. I did this to save myself. She stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or confusion. But then it hardened into something cold and sharp. Fine, she said. If that's how you want it, then fine. Don't call me when you need help. Don't expect me to take care of you when you're too old to wipe your own ass. I won't, I said. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. But before she left, she turned back, and her voice was low and vicious. I hope it was worth it, Mom. I hope your charity cases keep you warm at night. The door slammed so hard the crucifix rattled on the wall. I stood there in the silence, my hands shaking. I walked back to the window and looked out at the park, at the golden leaves drifting down like confetti. My coffee was cold. I poured it down the sink and made a fresh cup, because that's what you do. You keep going. You put one foot in front of the other. But as I stood there, staring out at the October morning, I felt something shift inside me. Not regret, not guilt, something closer to relief. Like I'd been carrying a weight for so long, I'd forgotten it was there. And now, suddenly, I'd set it down. I didn't know then that the weight was about to come crashing back. That Simone's visit was only the beginning. That in 2 weeks, I'd find a letter in my mailbox. A letter that would change everything. But for now, I just stood at the window and drank my coffee and let myself feel free. The next few days passed quietly. I fell back into my routine. Morning coffee, a walk through the park, lunch at the diner on Elmwood where the waitress Donna always remembered I liked my eggs over easy. I went to the library on Thursday and checked out a biography of Dorothy Day. I'd always admired her, the way she gave her whole life to serving the poor, even when it cost her everything. On Saturday, I went to Mass at St. Joseph's Cathedral. I'd been going there since I moved to this apartment, slipping into the back pew, where the light from the stained glass windows turned everything soft and blue. I didn't always pay attention to the homily. Father Mike had a tendency to ramble, but I liked the ritual of it. The standing and sitting and kneeling, the way everyone's voices blended together during the Our Father. It made me feel connected to something larger than myself, something that didn't require me to explain or justify or defend. After Mass, I lit a candle for Daniel. I did that every week. I didn't pray for anything specific, just stood there in the quiet, watching the flame flicker, and let myself remember him, the way he used to hum while he shaved, the way he called me Maggie Rose when he wanted to make me smile, the way he died, crushed under a steel beam on a construction site in Lackawanna, gone before the ambulance even arrived. Simone had been 7. She didn't cry at the funeral. She just sat next to me in her black dress, swinging her legs, asking when we could go home. I told myself she was too young to understand, that grief would come later. But it never did. Or maybe it came in a different form, a kind of hardness. A wall she built so high I could never find a way over it. I walked home slowly, taking the long way through the park. The air was crisp, the kind of cold that makes your cheeks sting. A young couple was having a picnic on the grass, their laughter carrying across the field. I watched them for a moment, feeling something twist in my chest. Not envy, exactly, but a kind of wistfulness. I'd had that once, that easy joy, that belief that the world was good and safe and the people you loved would always be there. When I got back to my apartment, there was a letter in my mailbox. It was hand-delivered. No stamp, no return address. Just my name, Margaret Callahan, written in neat blocky handwriting. I carried it upstairs, my pulse quickening for reasons I couldn't explain. I sat down at the kitchen table and opened it. The paper was plain white, the kind you'd buy at any drugstore. The handwriting was the same, blocky, deliberate, like someone had taken their time. You think you did the right thing, but you have no idea what you've set in motion. She won't stop, and neither will I. That was it. No signature, no explanation. I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of it. She won't stop, Simone, and neither will I. Who was I? I set the letter down and stared at it, my hands cold. It felt like a threat, but a vague one, menacing in its ambiguity. I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? Someone left me a cryptic note? They'd tell me to call back if something actually happened. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer with my bills and receipts, trying to convince myself it was nothing. A prank. A mistake. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the building settle and creak. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt afraid. The next morning, I called my friend Elaine. We'd worked together at Sisters of Charity for nearly 30 years. And even though she'd retired 5 years before I did, we still met for coffee once a month. She was the only person I'd told about Simone's visit, the only person who knew how deep the cut had gone. "Come over," she said when I told her about the letter. "I'll make tea. We'll figure this out." Elaine lived in North Buffalo, in a brick bungalow with a front porch she'd painted bright red. When I arrived, she already had the kettle on and a plate of butter cookies on the table, the kind with the jam in the middle that we used to steal from the nurses' lounge. "Let me see it," she said, holding out her hand. I gave her the letter. She read it twice, her lips pressed into a thin line. "This is from Brett," she said finally. "What? How do you know?" "Because I know men like Brett, corporate lawyers who think they're smarter than everyone else. Simone didn't come up with this plan on her own. He pushed her. And now he's trying to scare you. Why would he do that? Because you embarrassed them. They thought they were going to swoop in and take everything, and you pulled the rug out from under them. Men like Brett don't handle humiliation well." I wrapped my hands around my tea mug, trying to absorb the warmth. "So what do I do?" "You ignore it. You don't engage. And if they escalate, you call the police." "And if they don't stop?" Elaine reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then you fight back, Maggie. You've been fighting your whole life. You don't stop now." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to feel brave, but all I felt was tired. The letters kept coming. Not every day. That would have been too obvious. But every few days I'd find another one in my mailbox. Same handwriting, same vague threats. "You made a mistake. She deserves what's hers. This isn't over." I stopped telling Elaine about them. I stopped telling anyone. I just collected them in the kitchen drawer, a growing stack of anonymous malice, and tried to pretend they didn't make my hands shake every time I checked the mail. 3 weeks after Simone's visit, I saw her car parked across the street from my building. It was a sleek black Mercedes, impossible to miss on Richmond Avenue where most people drove 10-year-old Hondas with rust eating through the wheel wells. I was coming back from the grocery store, carrying 2 bags of the essentials, bread, eggs, a small container of yogurt, instant coffee. I saw the car and froze on the sidewalk, my heart hammering against my ribs. She was sitting in the driver's seat, staring up at my building, just sitting there, watching. I walked past the car, moving faster than I should have, trying not to look. But as I reached the front door, I heard her window roll down. "Mom." I stopped, turned. She was leaning out slightly, her face unreadable behind oversized sunglasses. "What do you want, Simone?" "We need to talk." "We already talked. Not like this. Not out here." She glanced around the street like she was afraid someone might see her in this neighborhood. "Can I come up?" Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to walk inside and lock the door. But she was still my daughter. Somewhere, buried under the resentment and the greed and the coldness, there had to be something left of the little girl I'd raised. "Fine," I said. 5 minutes. She followed me upstairs, her heels clicking on the worn linoleum. When we got to my apartment, she stood in the doorway for a moment, not coming in, like she was steeling herself to enter. Finally, she stepped inside and closed the door behind her. "You want coffee?" I asked, setting the grocery bags on the counter. "No." She stayed near the door, arms crossed. "I want to know why you're doing this." "Doing what?" "Don't play dumb. You gave away everything. Everything. Just to spite me." I turned to face her. "I didn't do it to spite you, Simone. I did it because I wanted to." "That's bullshit." "It's the truth." She pulled off her sunglasses and I saw her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Brett is furious. He spent thousands on that lawyer thinking..." She stopped, pressing her lips together. "Thinking what? That you'd inherit some fortune I never had?" "You had the house. You had savings. You could have left us something." "I gave you everything, Simone. Your whole childhood, your education, your wedding. I gave until there was nothing left of me." "That was your job," she said, her voice rising. "You're my mother. You're supposed to give. And you're my daughter. You were supposed to love me." The words hung in the air between us, raw and ugly. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. "I do love you," she said, but her voice was small, uncertain. "No," I said quietly. "You love what I could give you. There's a difference." She turned away, facing the window. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the radiator hissing, the muffled sound of traffic from the street below. "Brett says we could contest it," she said finally. "The donations. He says if you weren't in your right mind..." I was perfectly lucid. "You're 70 years old. You live alone. You could have been confused, manipulated." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Is that what you're going to do? Drag me into court? Tell a judge I'm senile?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, her back to me, her shoulders tense. "Get out," I said. "Mom, get out of my apartment, now." She turned and I saw tears streaming down her face. "Why are you being like this?" "Because I finally realized something," I said. "I spent 50 years trying to earn your love, but you can't earn something that was never there to begin with." She stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out, slamming the door behind her. I stood in the silence of my apartment, my whole body shaking. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face, trying to steady my breathing. When I looked up, I caught my reflection in the window. An old woman with gray hair and tired eyes, standing alone in a small kitchen. For the first time, I wondered if I'd made a mistake. Not in giving the money away. I'd do that again in a heartbeat. But in believing that Simone would ever understand. That somewhere inside her, there was still a part of the daughter I'd loved. Maybe there wasn't. Maybe there never had been. 2 days later, I got a phone call from a lawyer. His name was Richard Palermo, and he spoke with the clipped, efficient tone of someone who billed by the minute. He explained that he represented Simone Hartley, my daughter, and that they were filing a petition to have my financial decisions reviewed by the court. On what grounds? I asked, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles went white. Concerns about your mental competency, Mrs. Callahan. Your daughter believes you may not have been in a sound state of mind when you made certain decisions regarding your assets. I was perfectly sound. That will be for the court to determine. You'll be receiving formal notice in the next few days. I'd advise you to retain legal counsel. He hung up before I could respond. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the phone in my hand, trying to process what had just happened. Simone was actually doing this. She was going to stand up in court and tell a judge that I was incompetent, that I couldn't be trusted to make my own decisions, that I needed someone, her, to control my life. I thought about calling Elaine, but I couldn't bear to hear the pity in her voice. I thought about calling Father Mike, but what would I say? That I needed absolution for the sin of disappointing my daughter. Instead, I walked to the park. It was late afternoon, the sun already sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I sat on a bench near the pond and watched the ducks glide across the water, their movements slow and deliberate. A young mother was sitting on the bench next to mine, her toddler running circles around her, shrieking with laughter. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, a stain on her shirt that looked like applesauce. But when the little boy ran up to her and threw his arms around her legs, she smiled, a real smile, full of warmth and tenderness. I wondered if I'd ever looked at Simone like that, if I'd ever felt that kind of uncomplicated joy in her presence. I must have once, but I couldn't remember it now. The mother caught me watching and gave me a tired wave. Sorry if he's bothering you. He's not, I said. He's beautiful. Thanks. She glanced down at her son, who was now trying to climb onto the bench. I keep telling myself it'll get easier, that one day I'll miss this chaos. You will, I said, but that doesn't make it easier now. She laughed, a soft, genuine sound. You have kids? One daughter. Does it get easier? I looked at the toddler, at his round cheeks and bright eyes, at the way he trusted his mother completely, without question. And I thought about Simone, sitting in her Mercedes, staring up at my building like it was a fortress she needed to breach. No, I said quietly. It gets harder, but in different ways. The mother gave me a sympathetic smile, like she could sense the sadness behind my words. Then her son tugged on her hand, demanding her attention, and she stood up, waving goodbye as they walked toward the playground. I stayed on the bench until the sun set and the air turned cold. When I finally walked home, my legs were stiff, my fingers numb, but I felt strangely calm, like I'd crossed some invisible line, and there was no going back now. The formal notice arrived 3 days later. It was a thick envelope, full of legal jargon I didn't understand. But the gist was clear. Simone and Brett were petitioning the court to declare me mentally incompetent. They wanted control of my finances, my medical decisions, my life. I read it twice, then set it on the kitchen table and stared at it like it might disappear if I looked long enough. I didn't have a lawyer. I didn't have money for a lawyer. And even if I did, what would I say? That I was perfectly capable of making my own decisions? That I'd given away my money because I wanted to? Would a judge believe me? Or would they look at my age, my small apartment, my solitary life and decide that Simone was right, that I needed someone to take care of me? I thought about calling Elaine. I thought about calling Father Mike. But instead I did something I hadn't done in years. I prayed, not in church, not with candles or rosaries or formal words. I just sat at my kitchen table, my hands folded in front of me, and I spoke to God the way I used to speak to Daniel. Honestly, without pretense, I don't know what to do, I said quietly. I don't know if I made the right choice. I thought I was doing something good, something generous. But now it feels like I'm being punished for it, and I don't understand why. I waited like maybe God would answer, but the apartment stayed silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of someone's TV through the wall. "I'm not asking you to fix this," I said. "I'm just asking you to help me see it clearly, to understand what I'm supposed to do next." Still nothing. But maybe that was the answer. Maybe faith wasn't about getting answers. It was about trusting that you'd find them eventually, even if the path was dark. I stood up, walked to the drawer where I'd been collecting the anonymous letters and pulled them all out. I spread them across the table, reading each one again. And that's when I saw it, something I'd missed before. The handwriting was the same in every letter. Blocky, deliberate, but the paper wasn't. Some of the letters were written on plain white printer paper. Others were on stationery with a watermark, a logo I recognized. It was the logo of Brett's law firm. My breath caught. These letters weren't from some anonymous stalker. They were from Brett, or someone at his firm. They'd been trying to scare me, to make me feel isolated and vulnerable, so that when they filed their petition, I'd be too frightened to fight back. I felt a surge of anger, hot and sharp. They thought I was weak. They thought I was some fragile old woman who'd crumble under pressure. They were wrong. I spent the next 2 days in the library, researching everything I could about competency hearings. I read case law. I took notes. I learned that the burden of proof was on Simone and Brett. They had to prove I wasn't capable of making my own decisions. And I learned that the best defense was documentation, bank statements, medical records, witness testimony. I called my doctor, Dr. Nguyen, and asked if she'd be willing to testify that I was of sound mind. She agreed without hesitation. I called the director of Catholic Charities and asked if she'd testify about the donation I'd made. She said she'd be honored. I even called Donna, the waitress at the diner, and asked if she'd be willing to come to court and talk about our conversations, about how I was sharp, engaged, fully present. "Of course, hun," Donna said. "You're one of the sharpest people I know. Anyone who says otherwise is full of it." By the end of the week, I had a file an inch thick, proof that I wasn't incompetent, that I'd made my decisions deliberately and thoughtfully. I didn't have a lawyer, but I had the truth, and I had to believe that would be enough. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early November. I woke up before dawn, my stomach churning with anxiety. I put on my best dress, a navy blue shirt dress I'd bought for Daniel's funeral and had worn to every important occasion since. I brushed my hair until it was smooth, pinned it back with the silver clips my mother had given me. I looked at myself in the mirror and tried to see what the judge would see. A 70-year-old woman, alone, fighting to keep control of her own life. I took the bus to the courthouse, my file clutched against my chest. The building was imposing. Gray stone, tall columns, the kind of architecture designed to make you feel small. Inside, the hallways echoed with the sound of footsteps and muffled conversations. I found the courtroom and sat in the back, waiting. Simone and Brett arrived 10 minutes later, flanked by their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd never lost a case in his life. Simone didn't look at me. She just sat in the front row, her hands folded in her lap, her face blank. When the judge entered, we all stood. She was a black woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She looked at the file in front of her, then at Simone and Brett, then at me. "Mrs. Callahan," she said, "do you have legal representation?" "No, Your Honor," I said, my voice steady. "I'm representing myself." She frowned slightly. "You understand that this is a serious matter?" "I do." "All right, let's proceed." Simone's lawyer stood up and launched into his argument. He painted a picture of me as a confused, isolated old woman who'd been taken advantage of by unscrupulous charities. He suggested that my decision to give away my assets was evidence of diminished capacity. He presented no medical evidence, no expert testimony. Just insinuation and rhetoric. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up and walked to the front of the courtroom. I didn't have a polished speech. I didn't have a legal strategy. I just had the truth. Your Honor, I said, I'm 70 years old. I've been a nurse for 43 years. I've raised a daughter on my own. I've made thousands of decisions, some good, some bad. But they were my decisions. And the decision to give away my money, that wasn't a mistake. That was the best decision I've ever made. I opened my file and pulled out the documentation, the bank statements, the donation receipts, the letters from the charities. I explained each one, walking the judge through my thought process. I didn't give this money away because I was confused, I said. I gave it away because I wanted to do something good with it. Because I believe that what we leave behind isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives we touch. I saw Simone shift in her seat, her jaw tightening. My daughter believes I owe her this money, I continued. But I don't. I gave her everything I had when she was growing up. I sacrificed everything for her. And now, for the first time in my life, I'm choosing to live for myself. That's not incompetence. That's freedom. The judge looked at me for a long moment, then at Simone. Ms. Hartley, would you like to respond? Simone stood up, her hands clenched at her sides. Your Honor, I don't understand why she did this. Why she gave everything away without even telling me. I'm her daughter. I deserved to know. You deserved nothing, I said, and my voice cracked. I loved you. I gave you everything. And you threw it back in my face the moment it wasn't enough. Simone's face crumpled. For a second, I thought she might cry. But then she straightened, her expression hardening. This isn't about love. It's about responsibility. No, I said. It's about control. You want to control me because you couldn't control the money. The judge held up a hand. That's enough. I've heard enough from both of you. She looked down at the file in front of her, flipping through the pages I had submitted. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of paper rustling. Finally, she looked up. Mrs. Callahan, I've reviewed the documentation you've provided. Your medical records indicate you're in good health, both physically and mentally. Your bank records show that your donations were deliberate and well documented. And the testimony from your doctor and the charities you've supported paints a picture of someone who is fully capable of making her own decisions. She turned to Simone. Ms. Hartley, I understand that you're concerned about your mother, but concern doesn't give you the right to override her autonomy. The petition is denied. I felt my knees buckle with relief. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. Mrs. Callahan, the judge said, you're free to continue managing your own affairs. This court finds no evidence of incompetence. Thank you, I whispered. Simone stood up, her face pale. This isn't over. The judge's gaze sharpened. Ms. Hartley, I suggest you accept this ruling and move on. If you continue to harass your mother, there will be consequences. Brett grabbed Simone's arm, pulling her toward the door. She looked back at me one last time, her eyes filled with something I couldn't name. Rage, maybe? Or grief. Then she was gone. I walked out of the courthouse into the cold November air. My file still clutched against my chest. The sky was gray, threatening snow. But I felt light, like I'd shed a weight I'd been carrying for years. Elaine was waiting for me on the steps. I'd called her that morning, told her where I'd be. She didn't say anything, just pulled me into a hug. You did it, she said. I did. How do you feel? I thought about it. Free, I said. Scared, but free. We walked to her car, and she drove me home. When we got to my building, she insisted on coming up making me tea, sitting with me while I processed everything that had happened. Do you think she'll stop now? I asked. Elaine was quiet for a moment. I don't know, Maggie. People like Brett, people like Simone, they don't let go easily. So what do I do? You keep living, she said. You keep choosing yourself, and if they come after you again, you fight back, just like you did today." I nodded, but I felt a chill run through me, because deep down, I knew Elaine was right. This wasn't over, and I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. The victory felt hollow. I thought winning the hearing would bring me peace, but instead, it brought silence. Simone stopped calling, stopped visiting, stopped sending letters, anonymous or otherwise. It was like she'd erased me from her life completely, the way you'd delete a file from your computer. One click, and I was gone. At first, I told myself I was relieved. I could go back to my quiet life, my morning coffee, my walks through the park. But the silence had weight. It pressed down on me in the evenings when the apartment felt too small and too empty. It whispered in my ear at night, asking questions I didn't want to answer. Had I done the right thing? Had I been too harsh? Had I lost my daughter forever? I tried to push the thoughts away, but they clung to me like cobwebs. Thanksgiving came and went. I spent it alone, heating up a Stouffer's turkey dinner and watching a marathon of old movies on TCM. I thought about calling Elaine, but she'd gone to visit her son in Pittsburgh. I thought about going to the community dinner at St. Joseph's, but the idea of sitting in a church basement surrounded by strangers, all of us pretending to be grateful, felt unbearable. So I stayed home. I ate my dinner in front of the TV and told myself this was what freedom looked like. But freedom, I was learning, could feel a lot like loneliness. The first snow fell in early December, blanketing Buffalo in a thick layer of white that turned everything soft and quiet. I bundled up in my old winter coat, the one I'd worn for 20 years, patched at the elbows and fraying at the cuffs, and walked to the park. The pond was frozen over, the ducks gone south for the winter. A few kids were skating on the ice, their laughter echoing across the empty field. I sat on my usual bench and watched them, remembering the winter Daniel and I took Simone ice skating for the first time. She'd been 6, bundled up in a puffy pink coat, her mittens clipped to her sleeves. She'd clung to Daniel's hand, her ankles wobbling, her face scrunched up with determination. "I can do it, Daddy!" she'd shouted. "Let me go." He'd let go, and she'd slid forward a few feet before falling flat on her bottom. But instead of crying, she'd laughed, this bright, joyful sound that made us both laugh too. I wondered when that little girl had disappeared, when the laughter had turned to bitterness, when love had become transactional, or maybe it had always been that way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it. A week before Christmas, I got a phone call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mrs. Callahan?" It was a woman's voice, young, hesitant. "Yes." "My name is Rachel Mendez. I'm a social worker at Catholic Charities. I wanted to reach out because of your donation." I straightened in my chair. "Is something wrong?" "No, not at all. Actually, I wanted to thank you. Your donation helped us expand our housing program for single mothers. We've been able to help 12 families find stable housing this year. 12 families who might have ended up on the street." I felt something loosen in my chest. "I'm glad it helped. It did more than help. It changed lives." She paused. "I know this is a bit unusual, but we're having a small gathering next week. Just some of the families we've helped, our staff, a few donors. We'd love it if you could come, so we can thank you properly." I hesitated. The thought of walking into a room full of strangers, being the center of attention, made my stomach twist. But another part of me, the part that had been aching for connection, for purpose, wanted to say yes. "I'll be there," I said. The gathering was held at the Catholic Charities office on Main Street, in a community room that smelled like coffee and fresh cookies. When I arrived, a young woman with a baby on her hip greeted me at the door. "Are you Margaret?" she asked, her face lighting up. "I am. I'm Sophia. You helped us." She shifted the baby to her other hip and reached out to shake my hand. We were living in my car, me and my son. Your donation paid for our first month's rent and the security deposit. It gave us a chance to start over. I looked at her son, a chubby baby with dark eyes and a smile that showed 2 tiny teeth. What's his name? Miguel. He's 8 months old. She kissed his forehead. I tell him every day how lucky we are. How there are good people in the world. I felt tears prick my eyes. You don't have to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved us. She led me into the room where a dozen other people were gathered. Mothers with children, staff members from the charity. Rachel Mendez with a clipboard and a warm smile. They clapped when I walked in, and I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Speech! Someone called out, and everyone laughed. I shook my head. I'm not good at speeches. Just tell us why you did it, Rachel said gently. I looked around the room at all these faces, strangers who'd become real to me in a way Simone never had. And I realized that this was why. This connection. This proof that my life had mattered, that my choices had meant something. I did it because I wanted to believe that the world could be better, I said quietly. That people could be better. And looking at all of you, I think maybe I was right. Sophia came over and hugged me. Miguel squished between us, gurgling happily. And for the first time in months, I felt whole. I left the gathering with a lightness I hadn't felt in years. I walked to the bus stop, humming a tune I couldn't quite place, my breath forming clouds in the cold December air. But when I got home, the lightness evaporated. There was someone sitting on the steps outside my building. Simone. She was wearing a long black coat, her hair pulled back, no sunglasses this time. She stood up when she saw me, her hands shoved deep in her pockets. Mom! I stopped a few feet away, my heart pounding. What are you doing here? I needed to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about. Please. Her voice cracked. Just give me 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. I looked at her, trying to read her face. She looked tired, older somehow, like the past few months had aged her. There were lines around her eyes I didn't remember seeing before. Against my better judgment, I nodded. 5 minutes. We sat in my apartment, the silence heavy between us. I made tea because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. Simone sat at the kitchen table, her coat still on, her fingers wrapped around the mug I gave her. I'm sorry, she said finally. I stared at her. What? I'm sorry. For everything. For the hearing. For the things I said. For... She trailed off, shaking her head. For all of it. I sat down across from her, wary. Why are you here, Simone? Because I've been thinking about what you said in court, about how I threw everything back in your face. She looked up, and her eyes were red. You were right. About what? About all of it. I did take you for granted. I did see you as a means to an end, and I'm ashamed of that. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her so badly. But I'd been hurt too many times. What changed? I asked. She took a shaky breath. Brett and I are getting divorced. I blinked. What? He's been having an affair. For 2 years. With his paralegal, She laughed, a bitter sound. I found out right after the hearing. He told me he was leaving me, taking half of everything. I'm sorry, I said, and I meant it. Don't be. I deserve it. She wiped her eyes. I spent so much time focused on money, on what I could get from you, from him, from anyone. And in the end, I lost everything that mattered. Simone, let me finish. She looked at me, her face raw with emotion. When I found out about Brett, I realized something. I realized that I've been so afraid of ending up like you, alone, with nothing, that I became the kind of person who deserves to be alone. And I don't want to be that person anymore. I felt something shift inside me, a crack in the wall I'd built. What do you want from me? I want to start over. I want to be your daughter again. Not because I want something from you, but because I miss you, because I love you. And I know I don't deserve another chance, but I'm asking for one anyway. I looked at her, this woman who was my daughter but also a stranger. I thought about all the years of resentment, all the hurt, all the ways we'd failed each other. And I thought about Sophia and her son, about the way she'd hugged me with such gratitude, such warmth. I thought about what Father Mike had said in his homily last Sunday, about how forgiveness wasn't about forgetting. It was about choosing to move forward despite the pain. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said quietly. I know, and I won't let you control my life. I won't let you make decisions for me. I won't, I promise, if you hurt me again. I won't, she said, and her voice was fierce. I swear to God, Mom, I won't. I took a sip of my tea, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. Part of me wanted to throw her out, to protect myself from more hurt. But another part, the part that still remembered her as a little girl, laughing on the ice, wanted to give her a chance. Okay, I said finally. We can start over, but slowly. No promises, no expectations. Just see what happens. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Thank you. We sat there in silence, drinking our tea, the winter light fading outside the window. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a beginning. Christmas came and Simone invited me to her apartment, a much smaller place in Amherst. Nothing like the house in Clarence. She'd cooked dinner herself, a simple meal of roasted chicken and vegetables. We ate at her small dining table, making awkward small talk about the weather, about her new job at a non-profit, about everything except the elephant in the room. After dinner, she handed me a wrapped box. I didn't get you anything, I said, guilt creeping in. I don't need anything. Just open it. I unwrapped the box carefully. Inside was a photo album, bound in soft leather. I opened it and saw pictures I hadn't seen in years. Me and Simone at the park, at the zoo, at her high school graduation. Me and Daniel on our wedding day. Simone as a baby, tiny and wrinkled and perfect. I found these in storage, she said. I thought maybe we could remember the good parts before everything got complicated. I flipped through the pages, my vision blurring with tears. Thank you. I want to take more pictures, she said. New ones, better ones. I looked up at her. This woman who was trying so hard to be different, to be better. I'd like that. The months passed slowly. Simone and I saw each other once a week. Coffee on Saturdays, walks through the park, occasional dinners at her apartment. It was tentative, fragile, like we were learning how to be mother and daughter all over again. Some days were good. We'd laugh over shared memories, talk about books we were reading, make plans for the future. Other days were hard. Old wounds would resurface, old patterns would creep back in, but we kept trying. In March, she asked if she could come with me to the Catholic Charities event, a fundraiser they were holding to thank donors. I said yes, and we went together. She met Sophia and Miguel, now a chubby toddler taking his first wobbly steps. She listened as Sophia told her story, and I saw tears in Simone's eyes. You did this, she whispered to me. You changed their lives. We all can, I said, if we choose to. On the drive home, she was quiet. Finally, she said, I want to donate too, to the scholarship fund at Canisius. Not a lot, I don't have much, but something. I looked at her, surprised. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. I want to do something good, like you did. I reached over and squeezed her hand. That would be wonderful. Spring came, bringing with it the smell of rain and the sight of crocuses pushing through the melting snow. I turned 71 in April, and Simone threw me a small party. Just her, Elaine, Donna from the diner, and a few other friends. We ate cake and laughed and told stories, and for the first time in years, I felt surrounded by love. That night, as I was getting ready for bed, Simone called. Did you have a good birthday? She asked. I did. Thank you for everything. I'm glad. She paused. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you forgive me? For everything I put you through. I sat down on the edge of my bed, looking out at the streetlights glowing in the darkness. I thought about all the hurt, all the anger, all the ways we'd wounded each other. And I thought about Sophia's words. There are good people in the world. I'm working on it, I said honestly, but I think we're getting there. That's enough, she said, her voice thick with emotion. That's more than I deserve. We all deserve grace, Simona. We all deserve a chance to start over. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my apartment, listening to the sounds of the building settling around me. I thought about the past year, the betrayal, the fight, the slow, painful process of rebuilding, and I realized something. I'd been afraid of being alone, afraid of having nothing, but in letting go of everything I thought I needed, I'd found something more valuable, myself. I wasn't defined by what I owned or who needed me or what I could give. I was defined by the choices I made, the values I held, the way I moved through the world. And that was enough. Summer arrived, painting Delaware Park in shades of green, so lush they almost hurt to look at. I started volunteering at Catholic charities once a week, helping with intake for new families. Rachel taught me how to use the database, and I spent my mornings listening to people's stories, connecting them with resources, reminding them that they weren't alone. It was the most fulfilling work I'd done since retiring from nursing. Simone and I fell into a rhythm. We had dinner every Sunday at her apartment, alternating who cooked. She joined me for Mass occasionally, sitting beside me in the back pew, her head bowed during the Our Father. I didn't ask if she believed. It didn't matter. She was there. That was enough. One Sunday in late June, as we were leaving church, she said, "I've been thinking about volunteering too, at the charity. Do you think they'd let me?" I smiled. I think they'd love that. Good, because I want to do something that matters, like you do. We walked to the car, the sun warm on our faces, and I felt a surge of gratitude so powerful, it almost knocked me over. Not for what I had, because I still didn't have much, but for what I'd learned. That love wasn't about what you could give or receive. It was about showing up, even when it was hard, even when you'd been hurt, even when you weren't sure it would work. It was about choosing grace over bitterness, hope over resentment, faith over fear. In August, I got a letter from Canisius College. They were dedicating the scholarship fund I had started, the one for nursing students who'd lost a parent, and they wanted me to come to the ceremony. I almost said no. I didn't want the attention, the speeches, the spotlight, but Simone convinced me to go. "Let them thank you, Mom," she said. "Let them honor what you did." So I went. The ceremony was held in the college chapel, a beautiful space with stained glass windows that cast colored light across the pews. 5 students had received scholarships that year, and each of them stood up to talk about what it meant to them. One girl, a shy freshman with dark hair and glasses, spoke about losing her father to cancer when she was 12. "I didn't think I'd ever be able to afford college," she said. "But this scholarship gave me hope. It showed me that someone believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself." I sat in the front row, Simone beside me, and cried quietly. Not from sadness, but from joy, from the knowledge that my life had meant something, that my choices had rippled outward in ways I'd never fully understand. After the ceremony, the girl came up to me. "Are you Mrs. Callahan?" "I am. Thank you," she said, her voice breaking. "Thank you for giving me a chance." I hugged her, this stranger who felt like family, and whispered, "You're going to do great things." Fall came again, the leaves turning gold and red, the air growing crisp. I was 71.5 now, my hair completely gray, my knees stiff in the mornings. But I felt more alive than I had in decades. Simone and I were sitting in the park one Saturday afternoon, watching the ducks return to the pond. She'd brought sandwiches from the deli on Elmwood, and we ate them in companionable silence. "Mom," she said eventually, "can I ask you something? Always. Do you regret it, giving away the money?" I thought about it. No, not for a second. Even after everything that happened, the hearing, the fight, all of it? Even then, I looked at her. Because it led to this. To us sitting here trying to figure out how to be family again. And that's worth more than any amount of money. She nodded, her eyes glistening. I'm glad, because I don't know what I would have done if you'd said yes. We sat there until the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. And I realized that this quiet moment, this fragile peace, was what I'd been searching for all along. Not wealth, not security, not even forgiveness, really. Just connection, just the knowledge that I wasn't alone, that I'd been loved, and that I'd loved in return, even imperfectly, that I'd lived a life that mattered. Winter came again, and with it, my 72nd birthday. Simone threw me another party, bigger this time, with more people, friends from Catholic Charities, the scholarship recipients from Canisius, Elaine and Donna and Father Mike. My small apartment was packed with laughter and warmth and love. At the end of the night, after everyone had left, Simone stayed to help me clean up. We washed dishes side by side, our hands in soapy water, and she said, "This is a good life you've built, Mom." "It's a simple life," I said. "Simple isn't bad. Simple is honest." I looked at her, this woman who'd hurt me so deeply and who was trying so hard to heal. "I'm proud of you," I said. I know I don't say it enough, but I am. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart." She hugged me, and I held her tight, feeling her heartbeat against mine. And I thought about all the ways we'd broken, and all the ways we were learning to mend. About how family wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, day after day, even when it hurt. About how the best inheritance I could leave wasn't money or property or possessions. It was this, the knowledge that love was a choice, that grace was possible, that no matter how far you fell, you could always find your way back. I'm 75 now, still living in my small apartment on Richmond Avenue, still volunteering at Catholic Charities, still taking my morning walks through Delaware Park. Simone visits every week, sometimes twice a week. We've taken that trip to Niagara Falls I always wanted to take, the one Daniel and I dreamed about. We've started a tradition of Sunday dinners, just the two of us, cooking together and talking about everything and nothing. She's dating someone new, a teacher named Marcus who makes her laugh and doesn't care about how much money she has. She seems lighter these days, freer, like she's finally figured out who she wants to be. And me? I'm content, not happy every moment. Life doesn't work that way, but content in a deep, abiding way that has nothing to do with what I own and everything to do with who I've become. I think about the day Simone showed up at my door, demanding her inheritance, and I almost laugh, because she was right. There was an inheritance, just not the one she expected. It wasn't money or property or things. It was the lesson that what we leave behind isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in lives touched, in kindness given, in moments of grace we offer to each other, even when, especially when, we don't deserve it. It's the knowledge that we all have a choice, to take or to give, to hoard or to share, to live for ourselves or to live for something larger. And I chose to give, to share, to live with open hands and an open heart. And in the end, that choice gave me everything that mattered. The end. In memory of all the mothers who gave everything, and all the daughters learning to receive. I don't need you anymore, old woman. I've already talked to the lawyer and transferred all the inheritance to my name, my daughter said mockingly. I simply asked, "What inheritance? I don't have anything in my name," leaving her pale.